I am the host of the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour. Joining me, as always, is Stan Ecklund from California. Stan, how's it going?
Sunny as usual.
I love to hear it. I mean, anything major going on in your area right now? Or is everyone still quiet?
No, the fires are out. The sun is shining. We don't get hurricanes, so it's pretty good. We're all coming out of our bunkers just long enough to be told to go back in. Still trying to figure out. I feel like when I went in, it was March 17th, and when I came out, it was November 20th. I'm trying to figure out where the rest of it went. But
right.
Other than that, we muddle on.
Well, I'm just double checking to make sure we're actually live. I'm going to mute myself for just a moment. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce two fantastic people who are joining us. In the darker shirt, we have Patrick Schwarz, and in the lighter shirt, we have Bill Levy. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
It is great to be here, Tim. Thank you, Tim and Stan, for having us today.
Well, you know, you are in your Frank Lloyd Wright house, the Mary Adams house, and we are so glad that you would invite us into your home. We always start these talks with 5 not so serious architecture questions, and I'm going to ask those not too serious questions sort of either one of you can answer or both, but you have to have super short answers, okay?
Okay, we're in.
All right, let's start with Bill. Bill, would you tell me your favorite architect?
Frank Lloyd Wright, of course, the greatest American architect.
Patrick, would it be the same for you?
Frank Lloyd Wright would be my favorite architect, and I really am a big fan of the Prairie School. So there are a number of architects that I really like, in particular, William Drummond as well.
Oh, nice. Okay,
good
so a nice shout out for someone else. Let's start with Patrick this time. Patrick, if you could live in any other Frank Lloyd Wright house, and just you can't live in yours anymore, you had to live in a different one, which one would it be?
Oh, that is a tough one because I would always choose my own since it always feels like coming back home.
Short answer, you got to give us a quick one.
Okay, quick
Hard
one.
choice.
I think we're going a different way. It's when I grew up by Jacobs 1.
Oh, fantastic. So we'll get into that in a minute. That would be great. Bill, tell me, cake or pie?
Pie, cherry pie.
Ooh, he even has a specific one, cherry. That's
Everybody
absolutely
loves pie. Come on.
All right. Our fourth question, although it's not even question number 4, it's actually question 87 on my list. Bill, if you could live in any other state than the one you currently live in?
Wow.
I mean, if you get old enough, you do have to move to either Florida or Arizona. I'm just telling you the law. But go ahead.
Yeah, neither of those will be happening. If I could live in any other state besides the one I'm living in, it would be Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very lots of other great architecture there. And finally, Patrick, favorite room in your own house?
It would be the master bedroom.
Nice. Bill, same for you, or is it different?
It would be the same.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's great. So we got the 5 questions out of the way. We're meeting both of you. Like I actually, you know, for those who are watching, I work with Patrick quite a bit because he saw me here on this podcast live stream, and we do a lot of cool Zoom facilitation. So actually, Patrick, I get to see you in the dining room all the time, but you have a connection to Frank Lloyd Wright that's pretty early. In fact, Bill, I know you came to Frank Lloyd Wright, to the Frank Lloyd Wright world, you know, some time ago. But I think Patrick's got you beat. Is that right, Patrick?
That is right. I actually met Frank Lloyd Wright in utero. So it sounds very strange. My mom worked in Madison, Wisconsin, which is my hometown. By the way, I see my sister as somebody who's joined our webinar. So hi, Vicki. So my mom worked for something on the Madison Square, right by the Madison Capitol. I think many people in this forum have seen it. And it was called the Honey Institute. So it was a business that promoted the honey industry. And she was a secretary while she was expecting me. And her boss, whose name was Mrs. Grace, and my mom went to lunch at a department store tea room. So it was on the square right by the Capitol. It's called Barron's Department Store. And she said they were having lunch, and in walked a very colorful group of people, and her boss actually recognized, waved to the group, and she said it was an older man with some younger, colorfully dressed people. And her boss said, "Peggy, this is Frank Lloyd Wright." And my mom said, "Nice to meet you." And she said, "Mr. Wright swept up his cape and went to the table that they were going to." And she said, "I've never met someone so interesting and arrogant in my life, but he certainly was interesting." By the way, during that particular time, she was expecting me. So Frank Lloyd Wright died the year I was born. And so people can figure my age out by that.
Now, you said you grew up really
my
close
age as well. So.
Right, very similar. Is it close there? You said you grew up in Madison, right around the corner from Jacobs 1. So what kind of effect did that very, that early Usonian house sort of have on you as a kid?
It was wonderful because I was constantly biking around where I lived. And I would always go to that house and just look because it was so different, so entirely different from everything else in the neighborhood. And it was built different. It looked like it should be in a forest area in a lot of ways at the time. And I just was very drawn to it, very much so.
Now, Bill, your connection to Frank Lloyd Wright might be a little bit later, but you really do connect into the arts and crafts, the prairie style houses in your own way. So tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you to this type of architecture.
I've always been drawn to turn of the century architecture in apartments that I've rented, a house that I purchased in a Chicago suburb called Skokie, Illinois. I lived in a 1927 brick bungalow, wood floors, wood trim. So I have always been drawn to that architecture. My first big wow with Mr. Wright was a visit to the Guggenheim Museum in New York in the mid or early 80s. I was actually traveling on my own and happened into the museum and was very much wowed by that. And I think that's where my interest, which developed into a passion for Wright, began.
So I know the two of you met, how many years ago is it now?
13.
So 13 years ago you met, and then at some point you decide to merge your lives and live together, and then at some point there was the opportunity to buy a new house. Although I think you told me it was interesting that when you over the course of your relationship, you go to each other's homes and you realize that you have very similar tastes, right?
Absolutely. After Madison, I got my doctoral degree in '91, and I actually got a job in Chicagoland, and I lived in Oak Park for 20 years, met Bill during the course of that time, and he was living in Skokie, and it was just a really great opportunity when we saw one another's houses. We said our stuff matches.
I don't know if we match, but our stuff matches.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was a nice thing is that there was an immediate connection to that area. And always certainly loved this period of time where Mr. Wright was doing the prairie style, and certainly after that as well.
And Patrick, you've had a connection, I think, before we really get into the house that you two have restored together. Patrick, you had a really interesting connection. You sent me some, if I can grab the pictures, I'll find them. But you had a connection to another Frank Lloyd Wright property and doing some restoration. So how did it come about that you were connected to the Seth Peterson cottage?
Yeah, this was in 1990, and it was before I lived in Illinois. I was living in Madison, and a friend of mine contacted me and he said, there is going to be some restoration of a Frank Lloyd Wright cottage in the Wisconsin Dells area. Would you like to help with that? Because I know you like Frank Lloyd Wright so much. And I said, yes. It's Mark Solner, and is a friend of mine who is an architectural designer. And it was the Seth Peterson cottage. And so this was something I got to do at the time. And there was a restoration architect. Many people are familiar with John Ecklund. Thank you, John, at the time. And I remember John saying to all of us who were taking things apart and piecing things together and working on this restoration, he said, save every screw, save every hinge, save every nail. And the interesting thing is later on, when we went through the journey of getting this house, I said, you know, we need to contact the guy who said save every screw, hinge, and nail. And so that's how we connected with John Ecklund to do our restoration here.
I'm impressed that after going through what we all know you would have had to have gone through for Seth Peterson, which was a pretty extensive, calling it a renovation is probably generous. You were willing to take on another one. I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Stan. And I just wanted to say with that, I really love that process. There's something very reinforcing about making something restored, bringing it back to what it was to the greatest degree possible. I loved it.
That's neat.
So it became time for you you decided together that you wanted to look for another house. Bill, did you set out thinking, let's go buy a Frank Lloyd Wright house?
Most certainly not, no. We knew we wanted some kind of statement architecture, probably some kind of historic architecture with unique features. And we were concentrating our search in Evanston, Illinois, first suburb north of Chicago, a tremendous amount of historic architecture there, a number of Wright homes there. And we weren't really finding anything that sang to us. And we were working with a realtor, but we bumped into the Mary Adams house on our own and saw that it was on the market, asked our realtor to arrange a tour, and he did. And I'll never forget that very first time we saw the house. As we were walking up the sidewalk, another couple was leaving, and they were snickering, and they looked at us and said, "Wait till you see the basement." And the basement was pretty horrific, as was much of the house, quite frankly. We looked at the house, and of course we were mesmerized by it, but we were very much intimidated by it. And it was many, many months and a handful of price drops later that brought us to the point where we ultimately made an offer and took the plunge.
By the way, the basement had some dirt floor in it, just so people know that.
Really?
That is true.
I have some pictures of the basement, but I don't think they look as bad as
finished.
That. But yeah, you know, I think Bill, when we talked before, is you made it. You sort of said, I think you kept looking for every other house instead of this one. Like you kept looking at houses and saying, and then kept thinking, well, it won't be like what we could do at the Mary Adams house.
We nothing even came close to our vision for this house. And at some point in time in the fall of 2010, as winter was approaching, the bank that was under control of the property did a price drop. They really wanted to unload the house. We made an offer. The folks who were here weren't quite ready to leave. We worked out a deal with them to stay and keep it stable while we got our ducks in a row to begin a restoration in the spring.
So when we talk about a restoration, I want to pull up some of the before pictures. You were very smart that you had someone take quite a few before pictures. So if you don't mind, I'd like to bring some of those up and walk through a few of those. And we can, and what I'll do is I'll have the entire screen of sort of before photos, and you can just sort of point out one that you think I should make larger or bring into view. So let me share my screen and do that. And I'll make this to where everyone can share a screen because we may want to do that in the future. Let me click on that button. Oh, where'd it go? There it goes. I'm going to click share this screen here, and we're going to see some before pictures of a very white house. Do you see that on your screen now, Bill and Patrick?
Not yet.
Yeah.
You see that you have started screen sharing.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Wow, that is white.
Yes.
It's very white. And actually, the woman that took these is a good friend of ours. Her name is Erica Hildegard Johnson. And she made things even look good in the before. But if you look at these photos, there's nothing characteristic about Frank Lloyd Wright.
No, I'm going to bring up a picture of the kitchen because I think it's very interesting when we talk about Frank Lloyd Wright kitchens, what we see. So this is an interesting change, obviously, from what was original.
Clearly a kitchen that had been remodeled in probably the 40s and neglected since then.
Right.
I do want to show some exterior photos because I think those will be more helpful. I'm going to slowly through these because I don't want to get anybody whiplash as we go through. And, you know, we'll see, actually, this is probably a good shot here of the looking out through to that porch, which I think we'll talk about in a little later, had been converted into an entry.
So
I think
that's the living room, yes.
And this goes out to the porch area, I think, but we can see, I mean, it doesn't look in the photograph, you said because she's so skilled as a photographer, it doesn't look awful, but I think if we sort of look at some of the basement shots, we start to get more of a feel. And then I'm gonna go find some of the exterior photos. I think that will actually be really informative of the condition of it. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to fly too quickly through these pictures because I don't want to give anybody whiplash. Talk to us a little bit about.
Bless her for not making them look like your typical real estate picture where everything is 5 times as large as it should be.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Stan. I think Erica very much has an RD eye for things, so it doesn't look like a typical real estate, but you're getting a good idea here of what we experienced with the home.
You know, it's interesting, you know, you talked about reaching out to John Eifler. You said, well, hey, we should get the guy who said, save all the screws. Bill, was it hard to get John, and how far did he have to travel to come help you?
John's an architect here in Chicago and lived in a nearby suburb. And of course, he jumped at the opportunity to be the lead architect on this project. And it didn't take us long to figure out what to do.
Right. And with, you know, him living so close, you know, 7 or, you know, like less than 10 minutes away, probably, how fortunate for you that he was available that nearby.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so he had purchased the Ross house in Glencoe prior to us getting this house. So he was going through a restoration, and in talking to John Moore, he had been involved with over 30 Wright restorations, and what a resume with that. And so it was really great to have him on board. It really gave us so much information. But you see what we went through here. So you're seeing some of the photos during restoration. This
is restoration.
We
leakage into the basement.
We had to dig trenches along in 6-foot spaces, dig trenches along the brick foundation in order to shore up the foundation, make it waterproof, install insulation and drain tiles. And we had to do it in segments because to open up larger segments would collapse the entire foundation.
Yeah. Also, we put in the 4th heating and cooling system in the home. So the original was coal. So we encountered a coal room in the basement. Then somebody put in oil. So there was an oil tank in the basement. In some of the earlier photos Tim showed, you saw the steam radiators, which don't exist there anymore. We made the decision to have geothermal.
Really?
And so there are no condensers around the home. And the really cool thing is we've got these fantastic floor registers that are original, and about half of them work with the current geothermal system, which is fantastic. We saved all of them, of course, because they're original. And so we put in the 4th system, but it has actually worked out quite well at this point. There were some fine tuning and adjustments over the years though with that.
You know, that there are currently a number of Frank Lloyd Wright houses on the market. And of course, we know so many of them, because of their age, are facing restoration at some point. So talk to us a little bit about I think your reticence to buy this house and do the restoration may have been from a very realistic view of how long this would take you to do. So you buy the house, you're able to make a good offer, buy the house for less than you would have a year before. Hopefully you got able to make an arrangement through the bank. And then how long does it take to actually do the restoration? And how do you decide what the roles will be in that process?
Our restoration took 14 months. It was actually 12 months from building permit to occupancy permit. The first 2 months we spent doing quiet demolition as we were continuing to finish the plans and get everything approved. And it was a process. It was a process that required daily attention. We had weekly meetings with John, with the architect, and with the builder every Tuesday morning, and it was a big commitment. The house was on my way home from work, and I would quite often leave my office saying, I'm not going to go today, but my car just couldn't help it. I would end up just at least driving by the house to see what's going on every day.
We were both hands-on every day, so there was clear supervision on multiple ends. So John was close, he could come here, both of us were here every day. And actually the builder who helped us with this was a client of Bill's too. And there was the hands-on with the every Tuesday meetings. So we didn't live in the house during the whole restoration. Could you imagine living in that? Thinking about the photos and things like that, which was really kind of cool in a way, because what happened is all the neighbors came out of their homes and they said, we should maybe get to know these people. And so we actually knew all of our neighbors before we moved in, and we held an open house when it was completed. And we just put a little flyer in everybody's door and said, thank you for putting up with our dust, dirt, and noise for over a year. Please come to an open house. Every neighbor showed.
Nice.
Who doesn't want a free tour of a restored Frank Lloyd Wright home?
Right, that's right.
I think, Stan, I remember vividly certain Frank Lloyd Wright houses, seeing them for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I feel very fortunate that I never made my way to the Mary Adams house before Patrick and Bill took on restoration, because I got that moment of rounding the corner and seeing this glowing, beautiful home that we'll see in a little bit is actually sort of the budget version of prairie houses from the time period. And we'll see how Mrs. Adams saved some money by doing that. And yet it was just glowing on this street corner. They're just beautiful. The hue the coloring is so beautiful. The woodwork looks so good. And I can imagine going through that as a neighborhood, right? And then getting this great house.
Yeah.
Have you seen this house yourself, Stan, both before and after?
I did not see it before. In fact, my interest in the Wright community actually post-dates their purchase of this house. But I can remember, I think it was, I want to say 2014 was when I decided I wanted to go buy that house. And I remember that the things that stood out to me was how visible it is to the street. I believe strongly in staying on the street. So I remember how visible it was, what wonderful condition it was in. And then, of course, the four piers that come out of the corners of the house that you just don't see anywhere else. I always remember seeing those, and the way the gutters drop down on the little squares in the lawn. I always told myself, if I got a house where I could do that, I was going to do that. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Stan, too. We love those features of the home, and clearly you have a great eye for these features. So having the Japanese draining systems, which Wright likes so much, and also the flying buttresses are definitely not a structural piece to the home, but they add this very nice geometric feel, and it kind of makes you feel like the house is moving at times as well.
So I'm going to share
a little more formidable than it might otherwise. And as Tim mentioned, the floor plan not being that exotic, that's something that adds a little unique flair.
Absolutely.
So, Stan, you were kind enough to share some photos from I think, Wisconsin Historical Society.
I believe that's where these ones are from, yeah.
And so these are from, I think you said, the 1940s.
Yes.
I'm just going to, I'll just go through them here to show the house from,
We haven't seen these.
I'll send them to you after this is done.
So, there's 4 or 5 photos here that really show up. And this, you can see by this time, they've already converted that into an entry.
Yes. Yes. We'll be talking about that, folks.
Right.
There it is again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I just thought it was nice to be able to share those.
Yes.
I think actually we want to just let everyone know that we're already 25 minutes into this, but we have a while longer to go. So if you were joining us thinking it was going to be an hour, just know that if you have to leave at the end of an hour, we understand that, but we'll probably go a little bit longer than that. And that's because we're getting a sort of unprecedented introduction to this marvelous house. And I think probably, Bill, that's a good cue for you. So Bill's going to bring us something special in just a moment. Now, Patrick, in the meantime, this house was built for Mary Adams, and I'm going to show a picture of her. There's a great photograph somewhere. I will find it and then bring it up, because I think it's kind of fun to see the kind of person that this house was built for.
And a quick reminder before Tim grabs that, for the folks who might have to leave early, this will be recorded and will be available online later if you have to take off.
Yeah, and we definitely understand people's busy schedules. Yeah, Tim, Mary Adams actually hailed from Lowell, Massachusetts originally. And she studied under Mary Baker Eddy, who founded the Christian Science religion. And her coming to Chicago, which was an area that she had an entrepreneur brother named Charles Willoughby. So the Mary M.W. Adams, the W is for Willoughby. And her brother was very familiar and was a business entrepreneur in Chicagoland, and that's Charles Willoughby. And very potentially could have introduced Mary Adams to Frank Lloyd Wright in his work. We don't have letter correspondence. We were able to get into our original file at Taliesin West at the time. So thanks, Bruce Brooks Pfeiffer and Oscar Munoz for that. That was before everything went to New York, all the archives. And Mary Adams was 70 years old at the time that Frank Lloyd Wright designed this home for her. And she wanted to bring the Christian Science religion to Highland Park, Illinois. Highland Park, everyone, is a Chicago suburb to the north. And that was one of her big purposes of coming here.
So Mary Adams was, I think you said 70 years old when she hired Frank Lloyd Wright. And then,
Yes.
and then she only lived in the house for about 3 years and then willed it to her brother. Is that accurate?
That is correct. She lived in the house for 3 years and then passed away at that point. So in the will, it was willed to her brother. And actually, we got a hold of her will in Lake County, and the house was valued at $3,500 at the time. Everything about this house is kind of middle. So it's 2,700 square feet. And Bill Storr refers to it as kind of a medium size Frank Lloyd Wright home. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what Mrs. Adams wanted for this home as we look at some of the rooms as well.
Well, I don't know if you can tell, but it looks like you have a visitor out front.
Okay, well, I am going
Fowler?
to answer the front door since
I haven't rang the bell yet, but
Wait. We'll let him ring the bell first. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, and
I'm approaching the house to.
some screen changing, and I will answer the door, everyone. So we'll see you in a minute. Oh, I hear the doorbell.
Hello, Patrick.
Hi, welcome to the Mary Adams home.
Thank you.
And please come in. This was designed in 1905 by Frank Lloyd Wright. It's a 115-year-old home, and Frank Lloyd Wright, when he designed this home, was 39 years old. And you'll notice right away, as I'm walking down this narrow hallway, you're kind of feeling compressed coming into what is called the reception room here. So this room, once you get in, will burst out at you. And this was a feature that Mr. Wright liked very much. I think that his aficionados are very familiar with, called compression and release. Now, one of the things that's very significant about this room is it's something you see in Victorian rooms at the time that was called a reception room. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright wasn't so gung-ho on Victorian architecture or anything of the style of Victorian. However, since Mrs. Adams brought Christian Science religion to Highland Park, she wanted a room to be able to greet the guests, and she wanted a room to be able to sit down and meet with people potentially interested in the religion. There are some nice features to this room that I just love. So there are some built-in bookshelves that are original to the home, and you'll see that they're holding books. I really like that reception room has kind of like a little library feeling to it as well. There is a photo of Mrs. Adams here on the table, and the floors in this room and the rest of this house, they are oak floors. You're going to see some trim too, and the trim in the home is southern yellow pine, and that was original to the home. And we restored the trim. In some cases, we had to add new trim because there were so many layers of paint that was not so safe. Some of the paint had lead in it. And you're seeing original colors. You're seeing original wood stain. We did that also for the stucco on the outside and the wood trim on the outside. The wood trim on the outside is cypress, and the inside again is southern yellow pine with quarter-stone oak floors. In this room also we have Mr. Wright's original plans. On his original plans, looking at Mrs. Adams' lifestyle, being a widow who was 70 at the time when she commissioned him, she had people that provided help to her. So on the upper floor, there is a maid's room, and in the basement, so the maid's room is here, and in the basement, I'm gonna put my glasses on, there's also the man's room, which we use now as an office. So it would probably be improper to have the man living on any other floor than the basement. So it necessitated the need of a basement, which usually Mr. Wright did not like. It was unnecessary space for clutter, as people know. Another really exciting feature that we see through the house, we have original floor registers, and about 50% of the floor registers worked with our geothermal or our fourth system that was part of this house. We like geothermal because it's very quiet. There aren't condensers blocking Mr. Wright's architecture. So we're excited by that.
And it's green.
And it's green. And would Mr. Wright like it? The answer to that is yes. He would definitely like it.
So Patrick, I have a real quick question, and I think Stan probably can point this out too. You know, we see other Chicagoland houses like the Roby House that also has this very formal entry with a reception area. It's interesting how you have a very similar feel here, that there's not a gigantic row of steps like there are at Roby, but we get these 3 steps to take us into the rest of the house, and it kind of separates. You see what I mean, Stan? It kind of separates that space.
And raises the first floor above ground level.
Yes, and that adds really nice features to the home. I definitely appreciate Mr. Wright looking at what the needs of Mrs. Adams were with the reception room. Certainly it's a room I think she used very much. And then her needs for the servants as well. Something that you're going to see throughout the house are sconces, and there are a couple in this room. And we want to give a shout out to John Eifler for the sconces. There are actually 42 sconces in this home. He designed them. We did not inherit any original Wright furniture as part of this home. And there were a couple of sconces in the home, but they were not original to Frank Lloyd Wright. Let's go to the stairway. And this is a feature I love about this home. When we bought the house, this particular area with the railings was down over here. And we think at some point it was moved. And the reason that it was moved is so people could bring furniture up and down the stairway. And so what we decided to do, very much wanting to restore it to Mr. Wright's original design, is we brought it back to his design. And my idea was make this so it's removable, so we could move furniture up and down when needed. So you can take this off. But I think
The
a
windscreen
very
itself.
important message to this is Mr. Wright wanted to indicate right away is this was the area for the family. So that's a very, very important thing. And we love this entryway. So it's a magic part of the home and very characteristic to Mr. Wright. There's a little nod here as we're going to be going into the living room area to Louis Sullivan. So this is a baluster reproduction from Chicago. And we think it's nice to have a nod to Louis Sullivan. Something that I just love too, as you're going to the living room, is the living room is foreshadowed by the side of the fireplace. So we are coming to the central part of the home, which Mr. Wright loved his central fireplaces in prairie architecture. The really beautiful part of the fireplace is we didn't need to do a whole lot of restoration. It was just kind of a major cleanup and it was really in quite good shape. And so I'm gonna enter into the flow of the living room right now. And we see the original fireplace. We actually have had the owners of previous times come back. So we have the Dr. Poser family to thank for the original andirons. They feel these date back to the original owner. And their mom, when they moved, took them with her, but they have given them back to the original home. So this is just a wonderful magic living room. One of the things that I like so much about the living room is you're going to see it's surrounded by windows. And even if you took out all the furniture, is the living room very much to me feels lodgy. So it's got this lodge feeling, and there's something rather masculine about it with the dark wood being surrounded by windows. You definitely see the porch area there. What was nice too is we added a built-in right by where Bill is standing. He will turn around in a minute. That is of a Frank Lloyd Wright design. So that fits in beautifully with the home. You'll see also that there is a nod to Mr. Wright with Buddha. There, it was a favorite thing that he loved in his rooms, and you definitely see those at Taliesin East. Very big feature. Bill is also showing right now, we had the original plans in the reception room. Here we have the elevations of the home. We were able to get an electronic file of all our documents, but we actually saw all the originals in person when we went to Taliesin West. Thanks again to Bruce Brooks Pfeiffer. And they took us around the storage area that was temperature controlled in Scottsdale. And we got to see things like Mr. Wright's Japanese prints in his wardrobe. And it was really exciting and fun. So that added to the fun for us. Also, there are things that we had in terms of furnishings. My dad would refinish duck decoys and things like that, which we think are earthy and go well in this home. We did not purchase furniture for this home. What you're seeing, we didn't have any original furniture, is the combination of both of our households. So this is definitely a lot of things from my living room that was in Oak Park where I lived for 20 years. In recent times, we actually went to Taliesin East in Spring Green, and we decided we want a piece of Frank Lloyd Wright furniture in our Frank Lloyd Wright home. And I've been seeing on the Right Attitude is there's a lot of people posting about barrel chairs. By the way, this was from the Taliesin bookstore. It was a floor model. So there are a number of people who may see this particular not so serious architecture hour who may have sat on this chair. So we think it's very much part of the Wright world. You're seeing more sconces in this room. We think it's a magical room with the living room. Mr. Wright's living rooms were always wonderful, and we think this is no exception to that. We're going to do a handoff in just a minute.
Ask if there's questions.
As you do that,
we're going to do the porch room, but we want to ask, are there any questions right now before we move on to the porch and some other areas?
I may be jumping ahead, but you showed these fantastic windows in the room. They're big, bright, open windows. There's not art glass in those. And that goes back to the idea that Mary Adams, I think we talked about earlier, had some cost-saving measures. So talk to us a little bit about the windows that are in this room that are all very clear.
Yeah, the windows in the home are original windows. So some of them you may see some wavy glass features if we're at the right angle. All of the outside windows are the original windows to the home. We actually did double windows because we wanted to be effective in terms of heating and cooling and have our home insulated. So John Eifler helped us with doing double windows with all of the windows. I can open one here. I'm just going to move this chair a little bit. So you'll see that this is an added double window. And then we have the original window, and I've got to lift this and open it up.
Typical Wright mechanism there for opening and closing the window. And then we installed energy efficient year-round storms on the inside.
Yeah, and thank you, John, again, for helping us be able to do that, which was so sensitive to Mr. Wright's way of doing things and the way that he liked things to look as well. So shall we do
and the point though being that a typical 1905 Wright house would have multiple art glass windows. These are just plain.
Correct. Our understanding is that Mrs. Adams was very strict on her budget and nixed the art glass, nixed the built-in furniture. We're about to visit the porch room on the north end of the house. The very first set of plans for this house also showed a similar porch room off the dining room on the south end of the house, and she nixed that as well.
So on the original plans, if people see those, they're definitely out and about, is you'll see that the plans say revised December 1905. So one of the extensions to the home on the south side was taken out, and that was that. So shall we now go into the porch room, and I am going to start doing some filming duties, and Bill is going to talk about the porch room. So here we go.
Thank you. We call this the porch room. This room was open when built, like the Millard House, which is 2 blocks south, 1683 Lake Avenue, built for George Madison Millard before his California home was later built. This room, we believe, was enclosed sometime in the 1930s or 1940s, and enclosed in a not very sympathetic way, enclosed with windows that had panes and not insulated. So it turned it into a 2-season room. And that is how it remained. As you enter the room, you can see that the window sills, the ledges, and these piers are all heavy cypress. This is the same cypress that was on the outside, that is currently on the outside of the house. And when built, of course, being an open room, there were no windows and there was no door here. This door didn't exist. You would simply walk out to this extension of the porch room. And this is the original design. As originally designed, there was a balcony here. You might have noticed on some of the photos that Stan sourced from Wisconsin that we showed earlier, this, at some point in time in the 1940s, perhaps, this was opened up and cement stairs were built. And for a period of time, this was used as the front door. Completely uncharacteristic of Wright. Wright liked to have his doorways hidden, pathway of adventure to discover the door. But for a number of years, a number of decades, this was used as the front door. Folks would enter off of Laurel Avenue, walk up a walkway, up these steps, and through an initial door here, and then to into the living room through those doors. Of course, we thought it was very important to restore this back to its original glory, and are thrilled that we've done so. We've got 4 sconces here. Again, a shout out to John Eifler and John Leck. And I think a very cool thing that we were able to accomplish here is, in the right seasons, we can turn this into an open porch. We can open the windows, and we have roller screens that hide. Every window opens, and when it's appropriate temperatures, we can sit in here and enjoy the outdoors and not be bugged by the bugs.
Nice. Any
questions? The only other thing I want to point out as kind of an exclamation point to this being a main entrance at some point in time is the doorbell that we left in place. This is a doorbell that was put here at some point in time, and we chose to clean it up and leave it in place to remind us that at some point in time, someone unsympathetically made this an entrance, a main entrance.
A very 30s doorbell.
Yes, you are correct.
I do have I think you're probably going to talk about it. So if you are, just don't worry about my question. I'd love for us to talk at some point about how you were able to figure out what colors to use in the home. I think you might talk about that in the dining room. And specifically, I'd love to know how you went back to a different color for the exterior, because as we see in many of the early pictures, the exterior was very light, very white looking, and you've gone to a much more golden sort of autumnal color scheme for both the interior and the exterior.
So the exterior, we, with the help of John Eifler, we dug through the layers and layers and layers of paint over stucco, 100+ years of layers of paint down to the original layer. And we also, thank you to Bruce Brooks Pfeiffer and Oscar Munoz, have a copy of Wright's manual, his original builder's manual for this house that also had formulas and procedures for creating the exterior stucco. The exterior stucco was a combination of various materials, and the tint was embedded in the stucco. And we restored the exterior stucco colors to those original colors that we were able to find digging down in the layers, and then able to verify with the manual. It's a typed manual. I got to wonder who typed up this 40-page manual about how to build this house and the various components of it.
One of the things too, I just wanted to mention that I love about the stucco, on the outside is once we tinted it and it didn't have this exterior coating of paint that was kind of drab and didn't radiate light, it always looks like light is coming from the house rather than kind of this flat, lifeless color, which it looked like when we obtained it. And it's just magic, the difference when you tint stucco and you do it the way that Mr. Wright envisioned it. So we love that.
And when you see something that's white, I think you can know almost immediately that that was not the original color.
Right, and this whole place was white, white, white.
And the wood trim, both exterior and interior, was basically black from having been stained and stained and stained
And painted.
And painted. The exterior trim, we had hand stripped down to original wood, and we used that manual and the formula for the stain to bring it back to its original color.
And if you look at original photos from Mary Adams' time, you can see the whole original knot holes now in the wood in the home, bringing it back. So that's kind of exciting too, to have that truly original wooden look. We're in the dining room, and you'll see it's kind of set up for a really important Zoom webinar, but Bill's going to talk about that too.
So this is the dining room. A lot of very interesting features here. Of course, you've got the band of windows, the original wavy glass windows on the outside, and our energy efficient storm windows on the inside. Again, we're fortunate enough to have quarter-stone oak floors throughout that were salvageable. And that's what we've got on the floor here. We have a built-in here. When we bought the house, I saw a photo that Tim flashed at the beginning. This was a white Formica built-in, and the wall was painted white. And when we disassembled this area,
there was a mirror.
The mirror was actually there.
Yeah.
When we disassembled this area, we and pulled off some layers here, we found 5 or 6 swatches of paint, different colors. And we suppose that perhaps Mr. Wright came here one day with paint samples and put them on the wall here. And from those samples, Mary Adams chose her interior colors. We have used those samples as well as the manual to inform us. And these are all Benjamin Moore historic colors. And we've gone with Wright's characteristic lighter bottom and darker top.
Other way around.
Lighter top and darker bottom. And we recreated a built-in that we suppose may have been here initially. The architectural plans on the very last page had kitchen cabinet designs. And we used those designs to inform us on this built-in, on the built-in in the living room that we just saw, also on a built-in that we created in the master bedroom, which we're gonna hold back on for now, so no upstairs today. And we used those designs for the kitchen, which we will enter shortly. The dining room, when built, had 2 entrances. It had the entrance that we just walked through. And thinking about 1905 and thinking about Mrs. Adams with a maid and a manservant, this room was for her and for her guests. And the second entrance to this room was here on this wall. And it was a swinging door. It led to the back hallway, which led either into the kitchen to the left or out the back door to the right. We chose to, in order to make this home more livable for current times, we chose to open up the kitchen to the dining room here. We created a mirror image of the original opening here. We had this approved by both the city of Highland Park, with whom we applied for and received local historic status, and the Illinois Department of the Illinois Historical Preservation Agency,
which oversaw our tax freeze incentive for the restoration. And both of those governmental agencies approved this interior work, understanding that it was 2012 and we needed to create a home that was livable for families in the future.
I would point out, especially to our viewers who think about these things, that Mr. Wright in his own lifetime made major changes, not only to his own homes, but also to other homes that when he changed the way people lived in them. And so obviously he was building this house originally for a very Victorian woman, or at least a woman who was from that era. And just like he did in maybe the Isabel Roberts house, where he completely, changed the interior so immensely, or others, I have trouble faulting anybody who makes a house more livable and saves it from what we saw it looking like before. So you move the door around a little bit. I think it actually makes a lot of sense to us that you're going to have, you're going to take it back to a kitchen much better than what you found. So, I personally, Stan, I don't know about you, but it makes sense to me to make this minor change to make it more livable and savable for the future.
Well,
yes, Tim, when I lived in Oak Park, I gave tours of the home and studio for 7 years. And one of the things that we all learned is that Mr. Wright saw his own home as a laboratory. So there were changes all the time to his own home and the studio. And you are so correct. It was a living laboratory.
Last fall, Tim and I had the privilege of spending some time at the Parker House there in Oak Park.
Nice.
Which is another one that from around a little earlier than this, but similar to what we're talking about here, they've made changes to that house, intelligent changes, measured changes, but to make it more livable in the modern day. I mean, you're talking about with the technology and the social mores and all the things that have changed over the course of a century, to ask someone to maintain a house exactly what it was with the ice chute out back and the coal chute in the basement is kind of silly. You have to be intelligent about how you do it and measure it. And I think this is a perfect example of that.
Yes, I think that is something very much that so many owners have to grapple with. And one of John Eifler's philosophies is he said, make the master bedroom and the kitchen very livable for people. And if you get a good set of owners, they're gonna love it. They're gonna take care of it. They're gonna keep it up. And that's really a big goal, is let's keep our wonderful history with Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. Absolutely. And that's a really nice thing. Before Bill goes in the kitchen, I just wanna show you a fun feature. Underneath the dining room table, there are some buttons that Mrs. Adams could use her foot to beckon her servants with a call box. So we have the original call box, and there are a couple of buttons under the dining room table that she would press with her foot. And we'll show you the call box too as we go to the kitchen.
So before we go in the kitchen, I do want to have Patrick swing to the outside. I don't know if we can get a good view of this, but we are truly, truly blessed and lucky to have Mr. Wright's original storage shed behind the 1960s
behind the garage. Let's see if I can get a decent view of it. So kind of behind that tree that you're seeing, to the side of the tree. So it's behind the garage.
So we're thrilled to have also restored that, the exterior stucco, the exterior trim. And you might be looking at the roofs. We'll also mention that we chose to install aluminum roofing that looks like cedar shingles. Again, we think that Wright would approve this. The Illinois Historic Preservation Agency approved this after a little bit of gentle pushing, and then later promoted it. This roof will last 40 years, and when it needs to be replaced, it will go in a landfill. It will get recycled. Our only other option would have been cedar shingles, which would have needed to be fire treated and which would have had a life of somewhere between 7 to 10 years and would have gone in a landfill. Again, we've taken some green initiatives here, which is one of John Eifler's strong specialties.
What a wonderful lot you have there.
Into the kitchen. Another photograph that I saw when Tim was showing the before photos was of a door right here. This was a pantry. There was a wall that went from here to here. There was a door here. This was a pantry. The original wall came across here. This was a very, very small, very, very dark kitchen. It was for servants. It was not for family. Again, with the approval of the governmental agencies, we were able to create a very modest 3-foot addition. We call it a bump out. It's cantilevered. And this 3 feet gave us the ability to have an island and opened up our kitchen tremendously. The roof line outside mirrors the roof line of the reception room. So if you are standing out on Laurel Avenue, looking at our house from outside the porch room, it would look like the roof of the kitchen bump out pierces through and continues to be the roof of the reception room. As I mentioned earlier, the cabinet designs were informed by the drawings on the last page of Wright's architectural plans. We opted to go modest. You'll note we do not have a honkin' 6-burner stove and a huge Sub-Zero refrigerator. It's not appropriate for this size kitchen. It's not necessary for our lifestyle. We wanted to go a little bit more modest and a little bit more understated. One of the I think really interesting things about the island is the corners. John Eifler's design for this island imitates the flying buttresses on the 4 corners of the house. Here they do serve an architectural feature. They hold up the granite countertop, but we thought that was really brilliant on John's part to mirror or mimic the flying buttresses. We have one original light fixture, one. It's here in the back hallway, and it's charming. It's a stained glass fixture with beaded chains hanging down, and of course we had it cleaned up and restored and put it back in place. We also
very high.
We also want to mention hardware, door hardware. Door hardware throughout the house is original hardware. We're told that it was probably off-the-shelf hardware, again, because Mrs. Adams was on a strict budget. It's not really prairie style, but we thought it was exceptionally important to keep all original hardware. We brought it all to a specialty store that cleaned it up, made it all properly functional, and plated it and had it reinstalled. The other original item that Patrick mentioned a moment ago is the call box. So when Mary Adams pressed that floor button, and there were also buttons in the master bedroom, this bell would ding, and an arm here would lift up, and it would say what button had been pressed, and either the maid or the manservant would know where to go. It's labeled here: front door, rear door, porch, living room, chamber 1. Unfortunately, it's not functional. When we bought the house, it was white.
As everything else
was. We stripped it, and here it is.
And that's our tour. Back to the dining room.
We can keep that computer.
We're gonna keep this computer, and Bill's going to just hook it up so you can see us in a
Oh,
different
you're
way?
back there. Take that one.
Okay, oh, we're back on this one. So Bill, could you turn?
Timothy, you're muted.
You'll want to unmute yourself, Patrick. There you go.
I just did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we can.
Okay, we'll switch to where we were.
So Stan, what did you think? I think it's your first time. Is it your first time in the Mary Adams house?
It is beautiful house. I mean, I think you've described it well as being a kind of a middle of the portfolio house in terms of size and cost and such, but a spectacular renovation. I mean, now we would expect no less from John Eifler, but also you have to have the right client to be able to put the capital and the sweat and everything else that it takes to go through a restoration of that magnitude. I'm just curious, we've talked a lot about the things that you've done. What was the biggest surprise that you had in the process? The thing that you really didn't see coming at you until it was right there in your face?
Wow, that is such a great question. And we were so on top of things and here every day. Let's see.
For me, the biggest surprise was how much fun it was.
Really?
It was really, really fun. Now, Patrick and I have different skill sets. Patrick's the in utero Frank Lloyd Wright aficionado. I actually think that Frank Lloyd Wright's part of his spirit has entered this man. He is the design guy. He has the eye. I'm a lawyer. I'm a business lawyer. I took care of things like insurance, which was complicated, and dealing with the contracts, the architect's contract, the contractor's contract. So we divided and conquered the big tasks. And I was just surprised in May of 2012 when we finally moved in that it went so smoothly, that it was so much fun, that we actually wanted to move in and stay together, that we didn't want to kill each other after that experience. And now it's been such a joyful house to live in.
And Stan, you're so right about this being a team effort. And I think we had the right team. I think there was a little tension between architect and builder,
Yes.
Which actually is good and I think plays well for the house. And I think we were so on top of being here all the time that we were truly a part of the team. And we really, I think, prevented things going over budget because we just stayed with it. It was a huge budget to make this happen. However, I think if you looked at things that could have happened that would have been big surprises, if we were not on top of it, it could have been a lot worse. We've been asked, would we do it again? And I think the answer is most definitely yes. We truly feel that. Maybe we're very unique in that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you see people who are, I don't want to say serial renovators, but I mean, you see people who talk about, I'm on my third one or I'm on my fourth one. And clearly they enjoy the process. And clearly you guys enjoyed this process as much as you enjoyed living there.
We did, but I think for serial renovators, they're flipping houses and making money. For us, this was to create our dream home, and a home that we want to stay in for the rest of our lives, and a home that we want to make sure lives on for another 100 years after that. We would consider other renovations. We would consider collaborating with others to save houses that might not otherwise be saved. Yes. Absolutely.
You actually hit on something that I'm kind of interested. Have you guys taken any steps for the future of the house in terms of protections or what's going to happen to the house once you're no longer there?
So we did apply for and were granted status as a local landmark. So this house cannot be demolished. We are looking at other protections such as preservation easements. I have some materials on my desk about that, which I will put my attention to at some point in time. Patrick and I are
are blessed with 4 kids. I have 2 of my own, natural born children. Patrick has 2 nieces that we consider to be our children. And we are hopeful that maybe someday one of them might become a steward of this house. They all understand it. They all appreciate it. We will live here as long as we can, and we will make sure it lives on.
Outstanding, outstanding. I think that's the kind of thing everybody wants to hear.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out before we go away. I see a couple people on the chat. So thank you, Katie. It's nice to see you there. That's one of Patrick's nieces, one of our kids. Love you, love Dylan, love Collins. Thank you, Sheila, my mother-in-law, and more like my mom. Good to see you here.
We love you, Sheila.
Patrick's
Love you,
sister,
Katie.
Vicky, nice to see you. You've been here since the start of the show, so thanks so much for that. Linda Eels.
Oh, Linda.
It was great to see.
She's great.
It was great to meet you when we visited the home that you so aptly steward, and thanks for joining us today. Samara, correct.
You know, before we go, I do have a couple other questions, because I know that there were a couple things that Patrick had sent me notes on that I hadn't asked about yet. So Bill, tell us, what was the deal with some furniture in the basement?
It's a great story. So the Willits house, probably Wright's most famous prairie style home, is due south of us on Sheridan Road in Highland Park. And at some point in time in the 1950s, we understand that all of the furniture that was designed for that home was placed out on the front yard. Was it sold? Was it up for grabs? We've heard conflicting stories. However, it all got picked up, and the dining room set ended up in the basement of this house. We have heard firsthand from
Previous owners. This is the Poser family, and 2 of the sons have visited and donated back the original andirons that they used to play ping pong on the original Willits dining room table. So Mrs. Poser actually got a hold of the dining room set, and I think some of the living room furniture as well. And then it's sold off to various other people. I think there are stories on the Right Attitude from Bernard Pyron about obtaining some of the furniture after that point. But we figure if we kind of start adding up, you know, we saw one of the chairs at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, that there was probably over $5 million of Willits furniture in the basement of this home. We wish it would have stayed. You know what? We would have brought it back to the Willits house.
Absolutely.
We would have brought it back to the Willits house and said this was original to this home. I think the dining room table ended up in a chicken coop, John Eifler said, and
in Wisconsin, somewhere in Wisconsin.
So there is a lot of folklore and interesting stories around it, but according to Mr. Pyron and the Poser family, we've got it from 2 different sources. Part of the Willits furniture was in this basement.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's a great story. I mean, that's half the reason that I do this stuff, is to hear those kind of really fascinating stories for, you know, about history that, you know, we obviously see the value in it now, but there are times when there are, what's the right way to say it? We're very fortunate, even though we kind of gnash our teeth at times when there are Frank Lloyd Wright buildings destroyed or demolished, or we think about, you know, them dismantling houses and only parts of them getting saved at the Metropolitan Museum or elsewhere. And then we realize how much your own house, this modest, and I say modest in the most, you know, tongue-in-cheek way about Frank Lloyd Wright, but this somewhat modest prairie style house that wasn't this big, huge extravaganza, what it had to survive to get to the point to where even you could say, we're not going to listen to the lady talking about the basement. You know, the people who left and we're like, oh, check out the basement. We can see, and how it had to actually stick with you. Like it had to get inside of you so that even, you know, 6 months, a year later, you're still comparing all the other houses you're looking at to that one that you just know you're not going to do. We're not going to do that Frank Lloyd Wright house because it's just too much work. and then it stuck with you. It had to worm its way into you so that you would say, you know what, let's do it. Let's make this the house that we're going to live in the rest of our lives. And I really think it's amazing that you were willing to share it with us in this way that is really the only way that we could bring all these people to it. So pandemic or not, Stan, it turns out, you know, Zoom actually is the best way for us to all connect on this.
Well, you know, we've talked about that, the days of a busload of 55 people rolling up to your front door, maybe a ways off. So we're very fortunate that we have the technology, and we're very fortunate that we have stewards who are willing to let us in their home in this fashion. And we're certainly grateful to you guys.
You know, while we have just a couple more minutes, I really do want to talk a little bit about etiquette. So those who are watching this either right now with us or in the future, Patrick and Bill live in a very visible Frank Lloyd Wright house on a lovely street in a quiet neighborhood, but anybody can sort of just drive down the street, stop and take a picture. And I think the gentleman will tell you, they often do. You know, they quite often do. And I know that you're both okay with people being in a public place and admiring the work that you've done, because that's part of the reason why, you know, you do it. You want to share it with other people. But there's some certain etiquette. We don't walk onto people's private property. We don't peek in their windows. We don't just open up doors. So if you do find yourself in Highland Park and you're there checking out this amazing house that they have restored, be respectful. Don't walk up the steps. Don't bang on doors or peek your way through the windows, because, you know, you are looking at where someone lives privately. And we just so much appreciate you sharing your house with us normally and then being able to do it this way with us today.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah,
and thank you, Stan.
It's interesting as you talk about what you just shared with the house. You had to have vision the whole way along, because it didn't look like the way Mr. Wright intended it to be. And you had to have a good vision and imagination of what it could be, what it once was. And thank you to all the people, so many associated with the Right Attitude site that have been the inspirations for us learning about things, what it should be, and it really helped to guide us. So thank you to all of those mentors. Another shout out for John Eifler, Jonathan Leck, who did a number of the craftsmanship things. And the craftsmanship that currently exists really resonates with us. And I also want to thank my dad. When I was growing up, I would go to his office and he had a wood lathe, and we would make woodwork pieces, and they're all around this house. And he always says the important thing is the craftsmanship. And that's why I think Mr. Wright's architecture resonated. It was that I valued craftsmanship so much early on. And Bill really appreciated that too as well, because the whole prairie craftsman style resonated with him before I met him and where he lives. So thank you to all of the inspirations who bring us here today. Stan, thank you also for the way that you maintain the Facebook page. I think it's really inclusive and supportive. Tim, thank you for being the best gall-darn facilitator. And Tim, for people who have missed this, is together with a lot of my presentations that I'm doing virtually. And Tim also sent me some communications that this is a best practice. They have a very skillful facilitator, and we certainly have that in the Not So Serious Architecture Hour. So I'll shut up, sorry.
Well, gentlemen, it was so fantastic. You inviting us into your home. That's a very personal thing to do, but I know how proud you are of what you have done, and we just really appreciate it. Right, Stan? Yeah. Absolutely. So I just want to let our audience know we do have an upcoming podcast coming. We're going to be doing another one of these, and our great guest is going to be, and host really, because he'll be bringing us into his home, Henry Whiting, who owns Teeter's Knoll, on December the 5th. So it'll also be at 2 p.m. Eastern, and you can extrapolate that to your time zone, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. out there on the left coast with Stan. And that's going to be really exciting to be brought into a completely different field. You know, Stan and you and I have sort of changed up as we get into the last 2 or 3 minutes of this conversation, we've sort of changed up how these podcasts or live streams are going to go. Partly because doing it every week is a little, it doesn't really feel special enough that we're kind of, bringing something over and over again. We like the idea of making it sort of appointment viewing. So we're going to be doing these more like once or twice a month, potentially. We'll announce plenty far in advance. So you'll see some stuff on the Right Attitude page. And of course, they're always archived on the Right Attitude page, and they go on to my YouTube channel eventually for the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour. Stan, what are you looking forward to as we continue through 2020, 2021? What's looking up for you in the Frank Lloyd Wright world?
Well, hopefully getting to the point where it can get back to something that resembles normal, or we start to see whatever the new normal turns out to be. 2020 was basically a wash in terms of tours and visits and events and all the things that happened. We just recently had the Building Conservancy's virtual conference, which I think was an outstanding event. We were able to have participants coming in from Japan, giving us virtual tours. I'm looking forward to seeing what that mix turns out to be, where we have certain things that can be done in person, like the new tour they're doing at Taliesin West with the self-guide, and more virtual things. From a personal note, I haven't been in Hollyhock House since since March the 7th, and I am dying to get back in there. Probably won't be until second quarter of next year. So I certainly am missing that. I'm missing seeing the progress on Residence A there on Olive Hill, where they've continued to work. We've seen pictures of the work that's been going on. If anything, they might be doing better without all of us around, because they don't have us sticking our faces up against it. But just the opportunity to start seeing some of our friends in person, some of our friends in the right world. We know there's a new normal. It'll never be the old normal. It seems like it's on the horizon, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I'm glad that you didn't end up being a casualty to the old normal.
Yes, Tim.
Yes, I am. Those of you who may not know, I am at the end of my quarantine after contracting COVID-19. Luckily, I had a very mild case. I would not wish this on anyone, even people I don't like and wish.
Made him lose his hair, for God's sakes.
Wear a mask.
I will point out to you, I would like to just point out to those watching that regardless of when you see this, it is never too late or too early for you to support a local Frank Lloyd Wright site. That means that even though you may not be able to go visit right now, you can buy your tour tickets in advance. So if you find some place and you plan to go as soon as restrictions are lifted, buy the ticket now. Let them use the money now, and then ask them about buying an open-ended ticket, something that you can use in the future. It certainly wouldn't hurt for you to spend $50, $100 for a future visit, which you know you're going to do. Get it on the books. You can change the date of it. It's not going to hurt anyone, and in fact, it may be one of the things that helps keep these sites moving forward. We've seen everyone have to make changes and change their budgets. I know we've seen huge budget changes at so many of these places. We've seen unfortunate layoffs. We've seen them furloughing people, and we know that it was already a struggle for many of these places to not to stay relevant, I shouldn't say that, but to be able to get their mission forward as the population ages and the people who support them have to continually find new people. That's obviously been even harder to do. So support them now. If you can, make that support happen now. Help them so that they will be there ready for us when we are able to go back out and really charge around the country. And I think really, Stan, as you and I both know, we're much sooner to have domestic travel than international travel. Yes. And so from that perspective, it is a great time to plan the trip that you're going to make to any of the really large sites, or maybe even more importantly, some of those off the beaten path sites that are used to only getting 4,000 or 5,000 visitors, but are even dropped way lower than that. Like, make a plan.
It's a great time to do that Christmas shopping for all those Wright fans in your life. There's an awful lot of online stores that would love to have your credit card number right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that is going to bring us to the end of the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour with a fantastic tour of the Mary Adams house there in the Chicagoland area with our marvelous hosts, Bill Levy and Patrick Schwarz, thank you so much for bringing us into your house and letting us be a part of this magnificent restoration that you did. You should be enormously proud, and I know you're so comfortable being there at home. We're glad that you're safe and that you have lots of probably continuing projects to do, getting the spider webs off and all the other stuff that accumulates over time, right? Right, Patrick?
Yes, that's true. They definitely are quite the wildlife species of this home.
Yeah, and they love that stucco to really connect to it. So
the webs really adhere.
Again, I look forward to next time I'm in the area being able to come and hang out with the two of you. It's been awesome doing it over Zoom. When we can get to that point, it would be great. Stan, thanks for joining us again, as always, as the co-host here.
As always, it just everybody keep your chin up, but wear that mask, stay distanced, and stay safe.
Yes, and everyone, no matter how you do it this Thanksgiving, hopefully it is as safe as possible. Have a marvelous Thanksgiving. Appreciate what we all have and the great things. And I have to say, I'm very thankful for all of you being with us today and letting us have this really great peek into a really beautifully restored Frank Lloyd Wright house. Until next time, I've been Tim Totten. That's Stan Ecklund. That's Patrick. That's Bill. For everyone, have a great Saturday afternoon. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Now I just got to figure out how to end this. Let's see. In 3, 2,